Good morning and Shana Tova. Happy New Year to everyone. It's also Shabbat, so Shabbat Shalom. Wonderful to have you here at Temple Ahavat Shalom. Special welcome to those of you who are watching the live stream. Hopefully all of you have a prayer book, Mishkan HaNefesh, Dwelling Place of the Heart. My name is Rabbi Matt Berger. Pleased to be joined on the bima with our soloist Allison Rosoff, our assistant soloist Michelle McNicholas, our High Holiday Choir, and our choir leader Brian Smalley, as well as Joy Katzen Guthrie, sporting a very nice white hat today. Well done, Yasher Koach. We will begin the service in just a bit. I just wanted to share a brief announcement about when you're coming in, there's a big box, and there are a bunch of blue pins inside there. So what are these blue pins? So there's a new organization called the Foundation to Combat Anti-Semitism, and they launched a hashtag Stand Up to Jewish Hate, which is a national campaign to raise awareness about anti-Semitism. You can feel free to take one of these pins. And if you're interested in learning more about it in person, there's a community program on October 3rd. It'll be in our happenings email with another Matthew Berger, Matthew E. Berger. I am Matthew L. Berger, just in case you're wondering. And Matthew E. Berger is the director of the foundation, which was originally Bob Kraft's idea. He's the owner of the Patriots. We are going to begin this morning's service on page 109 in your Machzorim, in your High Holiday prayer books. You can feel free to join in any of the Hebrew or English readings. If you'd like to join me, I have awakened again, and I give thanks. Before me, the blessing of this day, a feast of choices and possibilities. And the breath within me says, great is your faithfulness. You offer me another chance. You offer me life. This day I am created to create this day. On the following page, you'll find the words of Ma Tovu, how beautiful are your tents, O Jacob. Please join me with a prayer for study on page 112. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, supreme power of the universe. You sanctify our lives with mitzvot and give us the sacred obligation of learning and living Torah. A prayer for our health and bodies, Asher Yatzar, is found on page 121. You have taught us, guard yourself well. Take good care of your lives. Your word calls to us, do no harm to yourself. Do not weaken or exhaust yourself. In gratitude for the gift of our bodies, we pray for a year of renewed health and replenished strength. May caring for our bodies become our daily practice. May we be attentive to our need for proper food, sleep, and exercise. Let no injury come to others through our acts or failure to act. But let our mitzvah be this, to build a just society in which care is a birthright and the blessing of health, the responsibility of all. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar, umafli la'asot. We praise you, Holy One, for wondrous acts of creation and healing. Continue on 136 with a responsive reading, Shofar, the voice of community. Blessed are we, blessed our gathering, as we open our hearts to the voice of the shofar. Happy are we who hear its call to return, the sacred trumpet. Blessed are we, held close by an ancient sound that echoes Lador Vador from generation to generation. Happy are we, rising to the joyful. Blessed are we who hear in these blasts the sound, the voice of community. Happy are we who know its embrace.
Its season of celebration, its quest for connection and purpose.
Holy is this gift of community. Blessed the act of belonging. Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the divine abounds everywhere and dwells in everything. Its faces are infinite. Its source suffuses all. The many are one. Honor to call forward Larry Lieberman for a quick introduction to the sounds of the shofar. And I'll ask all of us to rise just for a few brief moments while I make these calls. Tekiah. Shivarim Trua. Tekiah. Yashikoach. Blessed is the soul-reaching sound of the shofar. It proclaims the purpose of this day. Blessed is community, source of joy, solace, and strength to every living soul. Feel free to be seated. We'll continue now on page 141 with the Chatzi or half Kaddish words of praise.
B'chayichon
We rise now for the Baruch, the call to prayer on 142. We continue with a prayer, Asher Yatzar, on 145. The morning wind forever blows. The poem of creation is uninterrupted, but few are the ears that hear it. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Hamorot. Our praise to you, Adonai, creator of the cosmic lights. And on 146, in the bottom paragraph, may learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. Feel free to join me on 148. Bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth. Lead us with upright pride to the land that is ours. For you are a God of miracles and wonders. From all the peoples of the earth you sought us out and brought us near to your great enduring truth. So with love we acknowledge and proclaim that you are one. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled out your people, Israel, with love. To be seated. We'll continue now with You Shall Love, the continuation of the Shema on pages 152 and 153. I'll invite you to join me in Hebrew. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Feel free to join me on 157 at the bottom of the page. Love God with your mind. Stay curious, open to questions. Marvel at the wonder of what is. Love God with your heart. Stay alive to suffering and joy. Yearn for the world that could be. Love God with all your strength. Open your hands and give. Work for the sake of what ought to be. Continue on 164 with the words of freedom. Mi chamocha, who is like you. Continue with the Chatimah, the closing words at the bottom of the page. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Blessed are you and our lives, eternal one, who redeemed Israel. We rise now for the words of our tefillah, our standing prayers, which begin on page 166 as we ask God to open our lips.
Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agita Hilatecha. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agita Hilatecha. Oh God, open up my lips as I begin to pray. Oh God, open up my lips as I begin to pray. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agita Hilatecha. Adonai, Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Agita Hilatecha.
Feel free to be seated. We continue on page 175 with the beautiful prayer, Unatana Tochef, the sacred power of this day. On 175, let us embrace the day in its holiness, for this day is a throne of goodness and power. Please. When the people of Israel do God's will, they strengthen God's power on high. But when the people of Israel fail to do God's will, they weaken, if one might say it, God's great power. So let this day recall your power and ours. Let it remind us of our promises kept and broken, as we remind you of yours. Let this day be a throne of forgiveness, for today we are the accountants of our souls, the navigators of our hearts, seeking wholeness and new direction. And we seek you through signs of your presence in the arc of sacred history. I make this covenant not with you alone, but with those who are standing here with us this day, and with those who are not. God of ages past, God of this day, as you are with our mothers and fathers, be with us as well. Continue on 176. And so a great shofar will cry, Tekiah. A still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, Behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. Please join me. All who come into this world pass before you like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock, when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments.
Rosh Hashanah yekatevun, uvyom som kippur yekatemun. Rosh Hashanah yekatevun, uvyom som kippur yekatemun.
Continuing on 179, on Rosh Hashanah we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead opening wide before us. The day of fasting, narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a new year, and this we know. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some will die young, and some very old. Some by water, and some by fire. Some by sword, and some by beast. Some by hunger, and some by thirst. Some by plague, and some by earthquake. Some by stoning, and some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease. Some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind. Some will have strife. Some will be tranquil. Some will be tormented. Some will be raised high. Some will be brought low. Some will have riches. Some will be impoverished. On 180, Utshuva, Utfilah, Utzedakah, Avirin et Roa Hagzerah, but through return to the right path, Through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. Continue on page 182. We who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. We rise now for the words of the Kiddushah, sanctification, on page 184. Baruch atah Adonai HaMelech HaKadosh. Please be seated. We'll continue now on page 199 as we move to continue our service with a reading on the shofar and Malchiot, the voice of sovereignty. According to Rabbah, the Holy One said, on Rosh Hashanah, recite before me words of Malchiot, sovereignty, Zichronot, remembrance, and Shofarot. Sovereignty so that you may acknowledge me as ruler over you. Remembrance so that remembrances of you may rise up favorably before me. And how shall all of this be accomplished? Through the sound of the shofar. My pleasure now to call forward Bill Ross to help open the Aron Kodesh, to open the Ark. And when he reaches the Ark, I'll ask all of you to rise for the great Aleinu words of adoration found on 202.
Aleinu l'shabeach. La'adon hakol l'tigdula liotzer v'reishit shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot v'lo simanu k'mishmerot hadama. Shelo samkelkeinu kahem. Nikor aleinu kechol hamunam va'anaknu korim. Umishtachavim umodim. Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu.
Let's continue on page 205, a meditation for the sounding of the ram's horn, the shofar. Dwell on each sound of the shofar, contemplate its meaning. Tekiah, one whole note. Shvarim truah, 3 broken notes, 9 staccato notes. Tekiah, one whole note. My return to the right path has the power to make me whole again. Tekiah, once I was whole. Shvarim truah, in the wear and tear of living, I became broken and shattered. Tekiah, my teshuva, my returning is the power to make me whole again. Pleasure once again to invite Larry Lieberman to the bima as our Baal Tekiah, sounding the shofar. The blessings, which I'll chant, are found on page 206. I'll invite us to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyimanu v'higianu lasman hazeh. Source of blessing, eternal our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, summoning us to hear the sound of the shofar. Source of blessing, eternal our God, you fill the universe with majestic might, giving us life, upholding the life within us, and bringing us to this time. Tekiah. Shivarim Truah. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shivarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Truah. Tekiah. Yashar koach, well done. Feel free to be seated. We'll see Larry at least 2 more times. You're supposed to hear 100 blasts of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, and we most certainly will get there. On 207, today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. We continue on 213. Giver of life and all good gifts, grant us also wisdom to use only what we need, courage to trust your bounty, imagination to preserve our resources, determination to deny frivolous excess, and inspiration to sustain through temptation. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha u'cha na'eh lechodot. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise. We continue with a very special threefold benediction, Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing found on page 214. each of you know God's blessings of shelter and care. May it be so. May you receive the light of God's kindness and peace. May it be so. May you see God's favor and goodness, and may you partake of God's peace, God's shalom. In the Spirit, we continue with the words of Sim Shalom, God who makes peace, on page 216. Let the pursuit of peace and justice be our highest good, and may all people make peace their responsibility. Let Torah be a light that guards our lives towards empathy and understanding, towards generosity of heart. Let peace be our passion, chief among our prayers, every season of the year, every hour of the day. You are the Blessed One, eternal source of Shalom. For our silent reflection, the choir will be leading Shalom Rav, peace.
Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amecha. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amecha. Tasim shalom le'olam ki ata umelech Aron lechol hashalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom Rav. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amecha. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amecha. V'tov b'einecha levarech et amecha al Yisrael v'cholei tu v'chol sha'a b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav, b'sefer chaim rachel v'shalom ufarnisa tova nitzachev v'nikatev lefanecha nagnu v'chol amcha b'it Yisrael l'chaim tovim u'lishalom. Shalom, shalom, shalom Rav, shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amecha. Shalom Rav.
It's my pleasure now to call forward Eve and Warren Goldstein to open the Ark as we turn to page 224 and read the beautiful and meaningful prayer, Avinu Malkeinu. I'll ask all of us to rise. Avinu Malkeinu, we stand in awe, we draw close in love. Avinu Malkeinu, the power that passes through us, and pervades all things. Avinu Malkeinu, the divine that is present within and among us. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu, we speak this sacred truth aloud. Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha, we stand as one, accountable for our sins. Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Ve'al Olalenu V'Tapenu, we yearn for true compassion for our children most of all. Avinu Malkeinu Kale Dever V'Cherev V'Ra'av Me'aleinu, may we resist the ravages of illness, fear, and despair. Avinu Malkeinu Kale Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu, let us summon courage to withstand our enemies. Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim, let the goodness of this gift of life be engraved upon our hearts. Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova, may we taste anew the sweetness of each day. Avinu Malkeinu Malei Yadenu Mi Birchotecha, let us wake up to the blessings already in our grasp. Avinu Malkeinu Chonenu Va'anenu Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim Aseh Imanu Tzedakah V'Chesed V'Hoshienu. However small our deeds, let us see their power to heal. May we save lives through compassion, generosity, and justice. As we begin our Torah service, turning to page 228 to list the 13 attributes of God, my pleasure to call forward Daniel Lippman and David Chazen. They'll be holding our Sifrei Torah, as well as Lisa Chazen, who will be undressing the Torah after the processional. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha V'Chata'a V'Nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, God compassionate, gracious, endlessly patient, loving, and true, showing mercy to the 1,000th generation, forgiving evil, defiance, and wrongdoing, granting pardon.
שלושה דברים, שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. שלושה דברים, שלושה דברים, שלושה דברים, העולם עומד. על התורה
Welcome to our Torah service. We'll be reading, as we do every Rosh Hashanah, a very special Torah portion selected for this day, which is otherwise known as the Akedah, or the binding of Isaac. A very challenging Torah portion of faith and love, love between individuals and God, and a dad toward his son. It's my honor to call forward for our first Aliyah LaTorah, Norm Kelton, who works in our temple office with IT and does a wonderful job. Yamod Nahum LaAliyah LaTorah. And our first Torah reader is Tammy Wolf, wonderful director of our religious school. Okay, you got your own.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach, Baruch Adonai Hambarach, Le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Asher bachar b'nu mikol ha'amim, V'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Vayahi ahar hadvarim ha'ela v'ha Elohim nisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni vayomer kachna et bincha et yechidcha Asher ahavta et Yitzchak v'lech lecha el eretz haMoriah v'halehu sham le'olah al achad haharim asher amar elecha vayishkam Avraham baboker vayahavosh et hamoro vayikach et shnei na'arav ito Ve'et Yitzchak beno, Vayevoka atzei olah, Vayikam vayelech el hamakom asher amar lo ha-Elohim. Vayom hashlishi, Vayisa Avraham et einav, Vayarei et hamakom merachok. Vayomer Avraham el na'arav, Shvu lachem po, im ha'hamor va'ani v'hana'ar ne'elcha ad ko, v'nishtachaveh v'nashuva aleichem, v'yikach Avraham et atzei ha'olah, v'yasem al Yitzchak beno, v'yikach b'yado et ha'esh ve'et ha'machelet, v'yelchu shneichem Yachdav, Vayomer Yitzhak el Avraham Aviv, Vayomer Avi, Vayomer Hineni Beni, Vayomer Hine Ha'esh V'Ha'itzim, Vayehaseh le'olah, Vayomer Avraham, Elohim, Yireh lo haseh, Le'olah beni, V'yelchu shneichem yachdav.
Let's all say Yasher Koach to Tammy for a beautiful Torah reading, and Norm will do the concluding blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Asher natan lanu Torat emet, V'chayei olam Nata berhoheinu, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Yasher Koach, Norm. If you turn to page 245 in your prayer books or look at the screen, you'll find the words to Mishaberach, God the one who blesses those who are ill. As we think of Jacqueline Albin, Joanne Beeman Fiddleman, Yonatan Ruven Ben Rivka, Charlie Burke, Harry Bronstein, Babs Brown, Peggy Bruno, Tina Bruns, Stephen Drenane, Norman Fiddleman, Harry Fleisch, Marcia Friedman, Denise Freifeld, Mitchell Freifeld, Sidel Freifeld, David Friedlander, Lee Grubman, Don Hirschman, Jim Howard, Kathy Howard, Ken Mercereau, William Miller, Alan Muirhead, Cole Montgomery, Michael Ranzino, Bob Rosen, Stephanie Ross, Carol Sabani, Albert Schaefer, Dennis Schulman, Angela Sermenis, Don Hirschman, Jeff Stark, Eve Goldstein, and Michelle Slaza. Are there any other names you'd like to add?
And Father George Dunn.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mikor habracha Limodenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuge the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Pleasure to call to the Torah at this time Jim Roberts. And this could be a lot of people, but B'nai Mitzvah alumni could be teens or adults. So if you became a B'nai Mitzvah here and you'd like to come forward for the honor of the Aliyah, step right up, as they say, the Bima. Welcome, one and all. Happy New Year, Shana Tova. If you have a prayer book, the blessings before and after are found on 230. What an awesome crew! Happy New Year to all of you. And welcome back to the Bima. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch et Amen.
Amen. Vayikra elav malach Adonai min hashamayim. Vayomer Abraham, Abraham. Vayomer hineni. Vayomer al tishlach yadcha el hana'ar ve'al taslo me'uma. Ki ata yadati. Kirei Elohim ata. V'lo chasachta. Et pincha yichidcha mimeni. Vayisa Abraham et einav, vayar v'hine ayil, achar nechaz basvach, b'karnav. Vayelech Abraham, vayikach et ha'ayil, v'yalehu le'olah tachat beno. Vayikra Abraham, Shem hamakom hahu, Adonai yireh, asher ye'amer hayom, v'har Adonai yira'eh. Vayikra malach Adonai el Abraham she'enit min hashamayim vayomer b'nishpati ne'um Adonai ki yan asher asita et hadavar hazeh v'lo chasachta et pincha et yichidecha ki barecha barechecha v'harba arba et zeracha v'kochvei hashamayim v'chacho asher al sefat hayam v'yirash zeracha et sha'ar oivav v'hitbarchu v'zarcha kol goyei haaretz ekev asher shamata b'koli vayisa Abraham el na'arav vayakumu vayelchu yachdav el be'er shava vayeshev Abraham be'er shava.
Let's all say Yasher Koach to Jim for a beautiful chanting from the Torah scroll and for our B'nai Mitzvah alumni. 1, 2, 3. Ba. Say Yasher Koach to all of you, strength, health, happiness, and good times. Now we're going to hear a translation, not a direct translation, of what you just heard. Daniel Lippman.
As Rabbi said, a particularly powerful Torah portion and poignant for me as a father of sons. This is adapted from Genesis 22, 1 through 19. God decided to give Abraham a test to see if he would obey everything that was commanded of him. So God said to Abraham, "Hey, Abraham, I'm right here. Ready, willing, and able," snapped Abraham, standing at attention. So God said, "Take your son." "Which son, God?" "I have two, Ishmael and Isaac, and I want to do just what you say." "But your only son." "Which only son, God?" "Ishmael is his mother's only son, and Isaac is his mother's only son, the one you love." "Well," Abraham said slowly, not quite standing at attention anymore, "I love both of them." God sighed. "Isaac, I mean," said God. Abraham replied very slowly this time and said, "All right, what do I have to do?" God said quietly, "Take him to a mountain, some 3 days away, and bring him to the top of that mountain and leave him there. Give him to me." Abraham swallowed. It was on the tip of his tongue to argue, but Abraham had learned at Sodom and Gomorrah that bargaining with God tends to make things longer rather than shorter. So they went to that mountain, and Abraham and Isaac hiked up the path together. Isaac was full of curiosity, and Abraham full of dread, which is curiosity without the fun. Neither one knew what lay ahead. When they reached the top of the mountain, Abraham made a base of wood, on top of which was an altar, and tied to that altar was Isaac. And Abraham stretched out his hand, and he took the carving knife he'd brought in his hand in order to kill his son. Just then, just at the moment before the carving knife arced downward and towards his precious son, a voice rang out saying, "Hey, Abraham!" Abraham spun around, his heart in his throat, going dizzy with fear and the wildest hope of relief. "I'm right here," he gasped out. "I'm ready, willing and able. Don't hurt the boy. Instead, you'll find a ram caught in a bush. Why not slaughter that here and offer some of it to God, and in the meantime, share this special meal with your son? Just remember, this is a special place, a place whither you followed God's voice, and you found you could make the journey and come home safely. This place is called Insight."
Every time after the Torah is read or chanted from, it's customary to lift the Sefer Torah scroll so that everyone can see, to the best of your ability, for those who are about 100 feet back, the Hebrew text. And we sing the words of Vizot HaTorah. This is the teaching that Moses brought to the Israelites. I'll ask all of us to rise as the Torah is lifted, and I'll invite Lisa Chazen once again to help us dress the Torah. Pleasure to invite Bobby Rosenberg to the Bima to read an introduction to the Haftarah portion for Rosh Hashanah.
Hayam Harat Olam. Today the world is born anew. These words, recited after the shofar is sounded, underscore a central theme of Rosh Hashanah creation and a renewal of life. The traditional Torah reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah accentuates this message. Genesis tells of the end of Sarah's barrenness, the birth of Isaac. So too, the Haftarah chosen by our sages for the first day of Rosh Hashanah recounts the story of a barren woman whose prayers are answered by the birth of a child. Hannah, a woman of deep piety and spiritual grace, her name means grace, presents the model of heartfelt prayer and integrity, and that contrasts sharply with the behavior of Eli, the whole high priest. Hannah cries out to God, bitterness of spirit, marat nefesh, as she is given life. Like her, we come together on Rosh Hashanah to seek renewed life and hope, to pray that we may transcend our pain and transform our lives.
My pleasure to call Arlene Siegel to the Bema to chant the Haftarah blessings that you'll find the opening blessing on page 247.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav b'divreihem hanemarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avtohu uv'Yisrael amohu uv'nvi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Just a note that Linda Ross, who practiced all summer with the choir and practiced for many weeks to do the Haftorah from the first book of Samuel, came down very recently with laryngitis, so we wish her a refuah shlema, full and complete recovery. Therefore, I am the stand-in for chanting the Haftarah, which begins right in the beginning, 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1. Vayhi ish echad min harachamatayim sofim mehar Ephraim ushmo Elkanah ben Yerucham ben Elihu ben Tohu ben Suf Ephrati velo shetei nashim shem achat Chana v'shem hashenit Peninnah vayhi lifnina yeladim ulchana ein v'yeladim ve'ala ha'ish hahu me'iro miyamim yamima lehishtachavot v'lizboach l'Adonai tzavaot b'shilo v'Hashem shenei v'nei Eli Chofni u'Phinchas Kohanim l'Adonai Vayhi hayom Vayizbach Elkanah Benatan Lifnina ishto Ulchovanecha Uvnotecha manot Ulchana itein menat achat afayim ki et chana ohev Adonai sagar rachma v'chiasata tzarara gam ta'as ba'avor Han ima ki sagar Adonai be'ad rachma v'chein yaseh shana v'shana midei alota beveit Adonai kein tachisana vaitiv ki lo tochal Vayomer la Elkana isha Hana lama tivchi Velameh lo tochli Velamech yar levaveh Halo Hanohi tov lach Me'asara banim. You'll find the blessing after the Haftarah all the way on page 259.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam Zur kol halamim Tzadik b'kol hadorot Ha'el ha'nehemon ha'mefaseh Hamdaber kaim Shekol devarav Emet v'tzedek Al ha'torah V'al ha'avodah V'al hanvihim V'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh V'al yom ha'zikaron hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Likdusha v'limnucha Lechavod ultifaret Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu modim lach Umrachim otach Yitbarach shimcha V'fi kol chai Tamid le'olam v'hed Udrachahem et v'kayem lahat Baruch atah Adonai Melech al kol haaretz Mekadesh ha-shabbat v'Yisrael V'yom hazikaron.
Amen. Let's all say Yashar Koch. Well done to Arlene. Beautiful chanting of the blessings. And we will now continue with the second set of shofar blasts. It's my honor to call Larry Lieberman to sound the shofar on page 268. You'll find the calls for the shofar. And I'll ask all of us to rise. Tekiah, Shivarim Trua, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shivarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. So I'll say Yashar Koach, well done. Feel free to be seated. On page 269, today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. The wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out to Kia. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Zichronot. We'll have a time of reflection now while the choir sings the words of Ki Elecha. My pleasure at this time to call forward to help us open the Aron Kodesh, opening the Ark, as we return the Torah, Barbara Gittimer and Sophia Schoen. Last night during my service, I spoke of trees and this set of verses in the book of Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs. We'll turn to those words right now on 277 as we rise. A precious teaching I've given you, my Torah. Do not forsake it. A tree of life and Eitz Chaim to those who hold it fast, all who embrace it know happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Take us back, Adonai, let us come back to you. Renew in our time the days of old. Larry, I'm going to do you a solid. Here you go. Come back up. You don't have to schlep all the way over there. We're going to continue with the third and final shofar blowing. And on 284, we'll read the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea kol truat amo Yisrael b'rachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people, Israel. I'll ask you to rise for the sounding of the shofar, a bal tekiah. Tekiah, shivarim truah. Tekiah, tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, tekiah, truah. Ready? Tekiah gedolah. Yasher koach. Well done.
Thank you.
He's got some pipes. We're going to continue on 285. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. Feel free to be seated. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiah, lovingly, favorably, receive our prayers of shofarot. On August 16th, 1935, two children's book authors were married in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Their names were Hans and Margaret. After sailing to Europe for their honeymoon, they fell in love with Paris and eventually moved to the City of Light. All the while, they worked together on a variety of projects, from illustrations to story manuscripts. By the late 1930s, however, trouble was brewing in Europe. In June 1940, Hans and Margaret became alarmed because Nazi troops were approaching Paris. Hearing the blasts of cannon fire in the distance, they knew instinctively it was time to flee. Since they didn't own a car, they tried to get a train ticket out of the city, but it was next to impossible. So they bought the only means of transportation they could find, a tandem bicycle. If you look at the screen, our tech crew is going to show a cartoon illustration of them preparing for their journey. Now, riding a bike on your own is one thing, but using a tandem bike is something else entirely. Because it's a bicycle built for two, it's much longer and heavier. Moreover, it's challenging for both riders to start at the same time, pedal at the same rate, and keep the bike balanced. Add in the stress of leaving the city with enemy troops drawing near, it's no wonder they didn't make a smooth getaway. Shifting gears, so to speak, Hans bought some spare parts, and working through the night, he patched together two separate bicycles. At 5 a.m. the next morning, Hans and Margaret pedaled out of Paris just 48 hours before Nazi soldiers entered the city. They didn't bring much, but in a leather satchel, they carried some unpublished illustrations and a manuscript for a children's book that would soon become famous. Traveling southward, Hans and Margaret reached a checkpoint where an officer became suspicious of their accents. They were afraid not only because they were both originally from Hamburg, Germany, but also because they were Jews. But when the officer looked in the satchel and saw a playful children's story about a monkey, he let them pass. After making their miraculous escape from Europe, the Rays arrived in New York City, settling in Greenwich Village. And in 1941, Houghton Mifflin published the first edition of Curious George. In America, Hans and Margaret lived the American dream as Curious George and its 6 sequels went on to sell more than 75 million copies. You can even purchase one if you'd like in Yiddish. But as you'll see on the screen, it all started with this slim volume bound in red-orange cloth, stamped in dark brown ink. Here you can see, hopefully, the 10-gallon Stetson hat that we now associate with Teddy Shackelford, the guardian who treats Curious George like his own child, also known as the man with the yellow hat. Teddy was an archaeologist who worked for Natural History Museum. As for the trademark hat, he bought it from a local safari shop. Evidently, the employees convinced him to buy it, saying, "Yellow is the new khaki." Who knew? When my kids, Avi and Maytal, were much younger, they loved Curious George, and I happen to think he's great too. Growing up, I enjoyed reading these colorful books and learning about George's zany adventures, especially the one where he orders 100 dozen donuts because he didn't know the meaning of a zero. That's 1,200 donuts. As a family, we also liked watching the animated TV series with William Macy voicing Teddy and the late New Orleans' own Dr. John writing the jazzy theme song. Now, I happen to believe that Curious George has a lot of good qualities, even though he's very mischievous. For one thing, he's incredibly creative. Give him a blank canvas, paint, and some brushes, and George will create an amazing world that he and perhaps us would like to inhabit. George is also great at multitasking, like the time he worked at his friend's restaurant and did some dishes. Evidently, George could wash, rinse, and dry dishes all at the same time. Remember, he has 4 appendages, though I'm not sure that the customers would be comfortable knowing that George uses hands and feet to do this, but you have to admire his work ethic. But by far, George's best quality is the simple fact that he is curious. George has an insatiable appetite for learning about the world around him, whether he's tinkering with phones, doing science experiments about tadpoles in ponds, or reading everything he can get his hands on, as you'll see in this picture. Now, George wasn't the first monkey with an inquisitive mind, but he's definitely the most famous. Of course, there are plenty of people, humans, who are curious too, like Albert Einstein, who opened new pathways in the field of physics and help us understand the universe a little bit more. He was fond of saying, the important thing is to never stop questioning, for curiosity has its own reason for existing. People who ask questions want to know more about the world, and asking questions is fundamental to Judaism, a religion that's based to a great extent on learning and scholarship. Here at Ahavat Shalom, we offer many opportunities to satisfy one's appetite and curiosity for learning. Our Brotherhood sponsors a monthly book club with Bagels and Lox that explores novels and literature written by Jewish authors on a wide spectrum of subjects. Our sisterhood also presents wonderful educational opportunities. Our social action committee's Speaking Up series brings local change agents to the synagogue, exploring community issues. And our annual speaker event showcases leading thinkers and sometimes entertainers, like the author and scholar Dara Horn and the a cappella singing group 613. They just put together, my wife sent it to me, Chicago's 25 or 6 to 4. Just go to YouTube and watch it. And for those interested in learning and being curious in person, making a pilgrimage to Israel, where we'll learn as well as explore, I'll be leading a 10-day congregational trip to the Holy Land in June 2024. When we remain open to curiosity and learning, it speaks to our humanity and humility. But perhaps most importantly, it protects us against the arrogance of certainty. Sadia Gaon, a medieval rabbi and sage, once observed that those who fail to admit their own inabilities will, quote, never fashion a ring. It's a poetic way of saying, if you think that you know everything, you won't learn anything new. One of the greatest challenges that our country faces is that many people go through their days knowing with certainty what they know and seeking confirmation that supports that very knowledge. Taken to an extreme, it's like putting blinders over your eyes, preventing people from learning additional insights about important issues such as power and privilege, a warming planet, the levers of our economy, and whether our justice system treats people fairly. You should know that Judaism rejects outright this way of thinking known as incuriosity. The Nobel-winning physicist Isidore Rabi once credited the Jewish ethos of curiosity and asking questions with shaping his life and career. As a young boy living in New York City's Lower East Side, his mother would always ask him how his school day went. But instead of asking, "Did you learn anything new at school today?" she asked her son, she called him Izzy, "Did you ask a good question today?" It's the type of inquiry that inspires curiosity and speaks to the importance of learning more about the world. Earlier this summer, a congregant sent me an email, and the subject line said, "The Florida Way." There was no text in the actual email itself, but there was a cartoon, which, thanks to our tech team, you can see on the screen. I'll read the caption for you. Before leaving Egypt, Moses thanks Pharaoh for teaching his people building skills. Now, as I shared in a sermon that particular week that I got 8 weeks ago, an astute individual will likely make the connection. This comedic satire refers to the numerous controversies brought about by the Florida Board of Education. Now, most of the coverage and righteous indignation from critics has focused on the curricular language now found in our state's guidelines for teaching about African-American slavery in middle schools, where students, like my 6th grade daughter Maytal, will now, quote, examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves, for example, agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic service, blacksmithing, and transportation. Instruction will include how slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. I said it then, and I'll say it now. This is unacceptable as an educational lesson and morally offensive. Now, I'll admit, when I got this, I did chuckle for a couple moments because there's Moses, Pharaoh, and that quip about marketable building skills. But this feeling faded quite quickly because there's no personal benefit in slavery. Imagine for a moment the following scenario. A middle school student, perhaps a child or grandchild of yours, sits down in their public school history class. The subject is the Shoah, the Holocaust, which thankfully in Florida is a requirement in every school district. The teacher asks the students to open the textbook to a particular page and reads the following. The Holocaust deprived Jews and many others of basic rights and privileges. Those who survived developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Now, this hasn't happened, but if things continue in this direction, it may well occur. A statement like this would absolutely be met with outrage, and for good reason, because it's unequivocally false. Just as there was no upside for slavery in America, there was certainly no upside to the horrors of the Holocaust. Now more than ever, it's critical that students are aware of history's greatest triumphs as well as history's greatest atrocities, without sweetening or downplaying the events that took place. As Winston Churchill once said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. The Florida Board of Education was also behind the decision to ban high school students from taking the new advanced placement course on African American Studies, as well as the failed push to alter sections of the advanced placement psychology course, which I took in high school, referring to gender issues. Simply put, incuriosity restricts knowledge. But it's not only happening in Florida. As you're likely aware, more and more books that are labeled controversial are being taken off library bookshelves in our public schools. PEN America, which is an organization formed 100 years ago to unite writers and celebrate creative expression, notes that in the prior 2022-2023 academic year, a total of 1,477 individual books were banned in American schools, with over 40% of the book bans connected to state legislation or proposed state legislation. And a full 80% of the subject matter references characters of color and LGBTQ themes. which seems to indicate a marked rise in what some people call bibliophobia, a fear of books. State legislation regarding sensitive materials limits students' equal access to information and may curtail what they learn in the classroom environment. They also greatly restrict the discretion of educators and school librarians to advance the breadth of students' knowledge. About a month ago, my wife Ida and I watched the final season of the TV show Ted Lasso. It's a great show. And one episode in the final season spoke directly to the importance of curiosity in life. The protagonist of the show, whose name is Ted, is an American soccer coach who manages a British football team in London, while the antagonist, whose name is Rupert, is the vindictive former owner of the team. One day, they both find themselves in a local bar surrounded by avid soccer fans. Looking for a way to humiliate Ted, the coach, Rupert asks, "Do you like darts?" Ted answers, "Oh, they're okay." Believing Ted was a novice, Rupert asks to place a wager on a game with some big consequences for the player who lost. If you look on the screen, you'll see a picture of Coach Ted getting ready to throw a dart. As the game nears its conclusion, Ted finds himself up against the ropes with everything riding on his last 3 throws. He then shares the following insight with Rupert. "Guys have underestimated me my entire life. It used to really bother me. Then one day I was driving my little boy to school, and I saw a quote by Walt Whitman painted on the wall. It said, 'Be curious, not judgmental.' So I get back in my car and I drive to work, and all of a sudden it hits me. All those fellas that used to belittle me, not a single one of them was curious. They thought they had everything all figured out. And I realized that they're underestimating me. I had nothing to do with it. Because if they were curious, they would have asked questions like, 'Have you played a lot of darts, Ted?' And I would have answered, 'I played every Sunday with my dad from the time I was 10 until I was 16 when he died.' And with that, Ted throws a double bullseye to win the game. Decades ago, Hans and Margaret Ray narrowly escaped the Nazis on a couple of makeshift bicycles, putting Europe in the rear mirror for good. They created a new chapter for themselves in New York City, becoming naturalized citizens in April 1946, and through it all, they never stopped being curious. In fact, as you'll see in this picture being put on the screen, it seems that they thrived. For 83 years, the adventures of Curious George have delighted children and adults with their playfulness and fun, revealing that curiosity is an essential part of learning. And not only that, the Rays taught us that even when we inevitably make mistakes, as George frequently did, we can always apologize and strive to do better. That's our task during the high holidays. Every Rosh Hashanah, we listen to the sound of the shofar or ram's horn. That is our alarm and wake-up call. It says, be curious, ask questions, keep an open mind. To be sure, we don't all believe, observe Judaism, or vote in the same way, but that's okay. What's important is that we strive to do better together as a community. As I like to say, there's enough room for every one of us here, in this sanctuary, in this congregation, and in this sacred community we call home. Shana Tova. Thank you for clapping for me drinking some water. I appreciate it. We're going to continue in the prayer book. My pleasure to invite Stephen Belinda Koenigsberg to open the ark. Once they reach the ark, I'll ask all of us to rise for the words of Aleinu, the adoration, which you'll find on page 286. We'll continue on page 291, a beautiful poem written by Hannah Senish. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. So it is with people that we love. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. We first think of individuals in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days mourning a loved one. We think of Edith Seligman, mother of Robert Lou Patrick Seligman, Gabriel P. Caprio, father of Allison Schoenfeld, grandfather of Mia Schoenfeld, Bruce Goldstein, cousin of Edie Becker, and Anne Lewis, aunt of Marjorie Graff. We also mark the yahrzeit anniversary of passing of the following individuals as we fondly remember Alan Allman, Sylvia Brandeis, Phyllis Cohen, Anita Cohen, Neil R. DeRemer, Bernice Epstein, Vera Fish, Arlene Gladstone, Gilbert Glenn, David Graff, King Healy, Paula Hickey, Helen Hilds, Sharon Katz, Hyman Katz, Frida Levine, Newton Levy, Samuel Leibovitz, Howard Lipschultz, Lori Lubotsky, Morris Milhouse, Matthew Benjamin Mollet, Sidney Paykoff, Sarah Perlman, Rose Plevin, Jean Resnick, Bella Rosenblatt, Manny Scheidler, Selwyn Skolnick, Ruth Snell, Audrey Snyder, Howard Snyder, Alan Spector, Joseph Stremiello, Rhoda Wexler, and Robert Woolman. Are there any other names to add for yahrzeit at this time?
Kelly Clark.
We think of all those families who have lost loved ones in the recent natural disasters, from earthquakes to floods in many places in our world. As we rise together now to share the words of Mourner's Kaddish, words of praise, page 292. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye decho beit Yisrael, v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'alam ulamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'rihu, le'ela kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who causes peace in the heavens cause peace to descend on us, Israel, Ukraine, and the world, as we say, amen. Feel free to be seated. Some brief announcements before the Festival Kiddush, which you'll be able to find on page 300. Many thanks to Allison, Joy, and our High Holiday Choir for leading a beautiful service, along with our tech team, Carrie and Saren Taylor and Mike Abdishi on sound. Tomorrow's second day Rosh Hashanah morning service begins here at 10 a.m., and today at 2 p.m., we'll have our Rosh Hashanah family service. Following the family service, it should be around 3:15 to 3:30. I'm going to be leading a short and meaningful Tashlik ceremony at the Dunedin Causeway. Park your cars by the High-End Grill on the left or south side of the road. When we meet, there's a beach area to symbolically cast our sins, somewhere between 3:15 and 3:30. Our reverse Tashlik beach cleanup on Honeymoon Island will be October 1st at 11:30. I spoke briefly about the Congregational Israel trip. You can talk to me or Kara in the front office. And please help us support the Gulf Coast Jewish Family and Children's Services food drive. There is a collection box in the foyer stating the items that are needed. And I'm pleased to announce that on Yom Kippur morning, our Rabbi Emeritus Gary Klein will be delivering the sermon. We're continuing now on page 300 with the Kiddush. Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Puri Hagafen L'chaim. Any kids or teenagers, if you want to come forward and sing the Motzi, you can feel free. Got a beautiful round challah here, round for the new year. Allison, you want some? It's a pleasure serving you. You want to just break off pieces. All right. Yeah. All right. Hello, hello. Welcome. All right, let's sing the Motzi, thanking God for bread. Min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful is said. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We say b'te'avon and joy to all of you. For those of you who are regulars at Shabbat services or watch on the live stream, always awesome to have my son Avi up here. I'd like to invite one final time Larry Lieberman to lead our final Tikiyah Gedolah. I'll ask all of us to rise for our service benediction as we reach our service's conclusion. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu shetchadesh aleinu shana tova u'mituka. God of our ancestors, God of all generations, may your presence in our lives this new year renew our spirits and renew our strength. May it be a good year. May it be a sweet year. Tekiah Gedolah. Yashikoach, well done. Lishana tova tekatevu, Lishana tova tekatevu, tekatevu. Shana tova, everyone.